Hello, Stephanie.
Yes, hello, Jan.
Beautiful to be here. It's my second interview today here in the area, and the second time I sit in front of a vineyard. So, and like I said to Christina and Dry before, you also know each other because you're only 15 minutes apart,
Yeah.
right? There's a reason, and the reason is behind us. And yeah, I'm much looking forward to hear a little bit about biodiversity later, because it is something that is really important to you, right?
Yes, it is. It's more or less in my blood.
Yeah, I think we had some beautiful discussions already about sheep and flowers and how to create a more resilient and biodiverse vineyard landscape. It's beautiful. Before we dive into that, let's get a little bit introduction to you and who you are. And first question I just ask you to make it easier is, you are a winemaker today, but if you would not be a winemaker, what would be the alternative in your life?
Yes, the first plan I had was to study biology and move to the ecological direction, something like nature protection. But by that time, it was not so famous and hard to find job in that field. So I decided to go into winemaking and work with biodiversity.
And that was when?
Yes, I started my education in 1994.
1994, okay.
Yes, half in a conventional working winery and the second year in an ecological, and then proceeded to become, yes, as we call it, Weinbautechnikerin. Nowadays it's equal to bachelor.
To bachelor, yeah. Okay. And I mean, we are sitting in the Mosel with a wonderful view over the vineyards and the Mosel River. And for you, the Mosel is a very special place, right? I mean, when have you been here for the first time, and when did you fall in love with the region?
Yes, actually, the first time I came to the Mosel Valley was on a school trip, and I was 18, and I just thought, oh well, it's pretty here, so come back for the harvest. And I contacted my parents' winery where they bought their wine by that time, and yeah, that's how it all started.
And many years later, you have a winery in the Mosel.
Yes, exactly.
Beautiful.
So from my first contact until I had my own winery, it was 15 years.
15 years,
yeah,
okay.
More or less. And yeah.
I mean, 15 years in the lifetime of a winemaker is not that much, right? It's you plant vineyards with 10 to 20 years inside, so.
Yeah, more or less. Yes, it's a generation thing. You plant a vineyard and it should last at least 30, 35, 40 years. So it's a decision for future you always make. Yeah.
So coming back to you being a winemaker today, now you're making wine for quite some years now, right? I mean, what number of vintage are you at? Are you counting?
Yes, in my own winery, it's 25 years,
25
also
years.
25th this year. And yes, I started 31 years ago.
Okay. Yeah. So if you reflect over those 30 years of winemaking development, is there a single person or a single experience that you can point to? I know it's very difficult when you have so many years in the field, that you can point to where you think this really influenced my way of thinking and my way of winemaking.
Well, I think I just got different experiences. So in the first winery where I started my education, I learned a lot about how to manage the vineyards. In the second winery, I learned more how to make the wine, because in the first one, it's not the way I would work today. But I think the main thing was I was in the place where I worked later, I was quite left on my own. So my employee said, well, I want someone who can manage vineyard and cellar. So I could really develop my way of thinking. And the best thing about having your own winery, you don't have anyone behind telling you how to work. So especially with letting herbs and plants grow in the vineyards, traditionally all the Mosel vineyards were very clean and no weeds and nothing. And yeah, I had no one telling me, oh no, what's that? So yeah, I could work a bit more crazy.
Well, and then another question that comes, and it's all like often like a bit difficult for some winemakers to answer. If you describe yourself and your personality as a bottle of wine, is there any specific like wine grape, wine style coming to your mind that reflects you?
Sure, it's Riesling.
Sure, it's Riesling. Okay.
Sometimes I think I have Riesling and not blood in my veins. And yes, I would compare myself to my very dry Riesling Kabinett because it's just no makeup, it's just straight and just open-minded.
Pure and honest and
exactly.
Yeah, but also developed in a certain way, right? Because Kabinett, I mean, often comes with a good concentration, intensity.
Yeah.
Like it.
Bit ripeness, but not too much.
And still like the fresh acidity and the drive.
Exactly, yes.
I think it's perfect. Love that description. We taste it, or will we taste it later, or did we taste it earlier? The one that you have in mind?
We already tasted it, and you found it very mineralic and well, not basic, but
there was a one where the Great Slate was coming out so nicely for me, right?
Yes.
Yeah. It was beautiful terroir wine that really showed like how Great Slate and Riesling can really underline complexity and the peach note. I remember like extremely well, like perfect. Fourth question for you: nature.
Yes.
What comes to your mind with regards to working in the vineyard?
Well, here in the Mosel Valley, we have really a hotspot of biodiversity because we have so many different ecosystems from the aquatic to the forest surrounding. And yes, if you give all the insects a bit of food in your vineyards, you really find lots of insects, bees, butterflies in the fields, and not depending on what you spray, it just gives them food and they're coming and they enjoy life in the vineyards. And when I'm working, I enjoy having vivid vineyards around me. So I don't want everything clean and neat, but a lot of life around me. And yes, sure, I'm hiding away our good slate, but I think you wanted to ask about climate things. You know, it was always here in the north area that you needed the open slate ground for warming up, having a good climate, and keeping the warmth of the day and giving it back to the plants during night. But now we have already a temperature increase of 1.6 degrees in the last 30 years. And I said, well, I cut off the ground heating and keep the cooler climate that is natural or was original for the Mosel in my vineyards. So yes, with all the, badly said, weeds, I have cooler climate. I have a better water supply because, the whole temperature in the vineyard is a bit lower and you have a shadow on the ground. And therefore, it's for me, a win-win situation. You have more biodiversity and you have more life in the ground as well, which gives more, during the time, more nutrition. Well, it takes some years to get a circulation because first the herbs take nutrition from the ground, but when they start rotting, they give all back what they took from the ground. And after a couple of years, you just get a circular system.
And it's just growing, like now you don't do anything for that like anymore, right? It's just spreading itself as it likes, or do you still add some flower mixtures sometimes? Or
yes, in this vineyard we started with a seed combination of 20 different regional plants, this is, I don't know the English words.
Say it in German.
This is Johanniskraut, with oregano, wild carrot, and things like that. All very famous for insects as well. And yes, if you don't mow it too early, they just produce seeds and it refreshes
Just goes on.
on its own. Yeah, so you keep the whole diversity of this greening during the years, but it needs the right management. So sometimes I work in it with my trimmer and going slalom, mowing here and there a little bit and leaving this.
Leaving this and that
Yeah,
to give it the chance to repopulate.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
With those words, can you briefly introduce to us who you are, what your winery stands for, what you are doing? Who is Stefanie Vornhecke?
Yes, where I am. Yes, I'm. Oh, yes, originally I was grown up in the Ruhr area, so no viticultural background. So my parents always drank wine. And well, with 24, I decided to live here in the Mosel area. And since then, I'm addicted to wine and wine growing.
So after a short rain interruption, I mean, after all, it's agriculture, right? We have less wind, actually, so less background noise. Beautiful. So where did we stop? I think I would like to ask you to introduce the winery Stefanie Vornhecke to us. So who are you? What are you doing? What is the purpose of your winery?
Yes, well, I started my winery in 2001.
2001.
Just as a very small winery beside raising my kids. And yeah, since my kids are growing, the winery grew. So I started with 0.7 hectare and now we're running roughly about 3 hectares.
Roughly about 3, okay.
Concentrated on Riesling and Pinot Noir, and now we started with a with a little bit of Sauvignac, which needs less spraying. One of the future wines.
Future varietals, yeah.
Yeah, and well, haven't really harvested it yet, but.
When did you plant the Sauvignac?
3 years ago.
3 years ago, okay. So it's slowly coming into the bottle at some point. Okay.
So last year, 20 liter, just for a little experiment, getting closer to it.
So let's get something in the glass.
Yeah,
you
sure.
got some Riesling for us, right?
Yes, exactly. So let's start with one of the matured Rieslings. This is a Riesling 9 years old. So from the 2016 crop. And yes, it was grown here in this hillside, Senheimer Wahrsager, which always gives a bit more spicy character than our other vineyard.
And we had a very, I want to say, like, engaging discussion earlier about petroleum in Riesling, right?
Yes.
And I was, I mean, I said this like many times already in these interviews, so it's on record, that I have a big problem with petroleum in Riesling because I belong to the school that believes that petroleum is a fault if it develops in Riesling. And you were basically agreeing with me, which made me very happy because sometimes you can get in very nasty discussions there in this topic.
Yes, I sometimes find it interesting when people talk about petroleum because to me it just sounds disgusting. I don't want to smell gasoline in my wine. Which is petroleum, and yes, a slightly matured Riesling is, it smells like a bit honey and maybe a bit wax or something.
Something like this, right?
Yeah, I can't really smell something like gasoline in my.
But this is also really the point because I in some. It's a big topic of debate, obviously, where it's coming from and why, and articles are written about it. Jamie Goody wrote a fantastic piece about it, actually, on his website, wineanorak.com. I can link it in the show notes, actually, if people are interested in that. But I still believe that petroleum is a sign of a faulty development of a wine. And for me, like an aged Riesling should actually like smell and taste like what you brought in the glass from the 2016. Yeah, so as you said yourself, like a little bit waxy, a little bit of cassia honey. There's some dried hay, there's some ginger, there's some saffron notes, something like that. Yeah. But there's nothing like extremely chemical or expressive like petroleum in that regard. Huh? So,
but I think it's just in the mind of a lot of people that a matured wine has a taste of petroleum. I think they don't even think about what petroleum really smells like. Just one of the normal words for matured wine, and they don't really see the background.
I mean, and you learn it in school, right? And that is like also in WSET and so on and so forth, right? They tell you like Riesling will develop these petroleum aromas when it ages. So maybe a good bridge to talk about like what you learn in school in general. I mean, you didn't learn this in school.
Not really, no.
Not really. So when did it start for you that you looked into that? Also like looking into complex greenings, looking into working in an alternative way against erosion, like soil protection, against the effects of global warming, etc. Is there any like point where you said, okay, there you really shifted your perspective, or was it from the beginning? Or
no, it was really from the beginning of my own winery. So when I started in 2001, I just let grow what grows in the vineyard. One of my first vineyards I took over from a very exact old wine grower, and I think for the first years when he came along his vineyard, he was really totally...
My God, what is she doing?
Exactly. So after he learned to know my wines, he was okay with it. But in the first years, it was, oh no, what she's doing, my beautiful vineyard. And a couple of years ago, we started here in the Mosel region the Mosel project, which really deals with how to support biodiversity, and we started planting those regional typical plants, and trying how to work with it best, and that it starts renewing itself. And yes, it was a group of 30 different wineries, and we got support by this project, and it was coming together. Oh, we're all going this bit more crazy way, and it was not you're standing on your own. And that was really good, because it meant a lot of coming together, exchanging, and going further, and was really good.
And how's the community around that in general? Because I mean, to be honest, like we have a lot of like the young winemakers at the Climate Wine Summit. I told you earlier, we only have one VDP estate from the Mosel. I think I have like no estate above 20 hectares from the Mosel. All of them are like below 10, below 20 hectares. Many of them are extremely young winemakers, this young generation, 25 to 35 years old. Of course, they all are like buying all in on this idea and low intervention winemaking and so on and so forth. But how would you say in general is the development in the Mosel when it comes to these thinkings?
Yes, you still have two sides. So one are more in the, all herbs are concurrents for the wines, and they want still clean or cleaner vineyards. And on the other hand, the group growing like this is getting bigger. And we have here also the initiative of Lebendige Mosel Weinberge, so vivid Mosel vineyards. And they try to support going further in this direction, that wine growing is not just concentrating on one plant, but it's a whole cosmos or ecosystem, and it's not only the wines standing in the vineyard as a monoculture. And that's what I was always thinking about. Wine is no monoculture. One thing I had first was wild strawberries covering the ground, and I saw I talked about subculture in the vineyard, things like that. So it's just a bit, looking on it with a bit of fun, and enjoying that it's full of life.
Another like point of full of life. I mean, you also like got yourself some helpers a couple of years ago, right? I mean, you have
Yes.
these very typical sheep,
Mhm.
right? The vineyard sheep. Biodiversity, little wisp coming here. When did you start having the sheep?
We started with the sheep 4.5 years ago, starting with 5, and now we have a hurdle of 28.
Very
actually.
cuddly ones, I want to say. They're very
Yes,
affectionate.
it's dwarf sheep. It's a French breed of Ouessant sheep. They are only about knee high, and well, they can well pass under the vines. So during winter time, I have them running in the vineyards, so they clean off the old greening. And now in summertime, they are caring for former vineyards because, yes, we're losing a lot of vineyards here in the region. And if we just let brambles and clematis grow, we lose a lot of biodiversity because we have specialized species for open and sunny land, so more the Mediterranean ecosystem. And if it's all overwhelmed by brambles, it's more or less dead land. And therefore, I have my sheep running and cleaning up former vineyards during the summer.
I can totally understand this because yesterday when I was out for a run, I like passed like a longer stretch of like abandoned vineyards, and
Yes.
everything you saw were like vines going all over, and brambles, blackberries, however you want to call it, right? Just like spreading everywhere, like crazy.
Yes.
I was first thinking it was like invasive species from Asia, but you said it didn't come here yet. It's just like totally normal, like German blackberries. But yeah, they really find their way, right?
Yes,
Nature
they
has
do.
taken their way back, but not in the most, let's say, biodiverse way, as you say.
Exactly.
Beautiful perspective. You have a second wine for us, right?
So this is not the original label. We have nicer ones now, but we waited quite long for the real design. And that was actually the first wine my daughter was in charge of. So she ran the education to become wine grower, and now she just finished her bachelor. So same way of education I went through. And yes, she wanted to show what we do special in our winery. So this wine is dedicated to our vineyard sheep. And yeah, maybe the first wine in a line of maybe showing more of the plants and what we have in the vineyards.
Bring the work that you do, the terroir, a little bit onto the bottle, onto the label.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think it's a beautiful perspective. So, so you work together already in the winery, or it's slow transition now, or what is the plan there?
Well, she just finished her bachelor last month, and now she will start to work with me maybe half time.
Part-time, yeah.
But she needs to get more, more different perspectives.
Experiences,
and maybe work for other wineries or something. Yeah.
I think it's very important in the development of young
exactly.
winemakers, right? Because you learn one thing at school, of course, but then getting out and getting the perspectives of other winemakers, I think is really, really important in that regard.
Seeing different organizations and just perspectives, how to produce wine, how to work in the vineyard, and so everything. So growing wine is personal philosophy, and it's never bad to see in different minds and ways.
And now I can ask, like, I mean, you're now at vintage number 31 or like 25 yourself, and 31 where you have been part of it. I usually say, like, when I talk to winemakers, I'm always like, after the young ones especially, I think after 20 vintages, you know somewhat what you're doing. Would you say after 31 vintages that you have a clue about what you are doing, or are you still...
Well, I'm still learning because every year is different, and that's the fantastic thing about our job. So it's not every year the same, but for me it's every year I'm looking at the grapes. I'm harvesting, and on the weather, and yeah, everything's different. And so I'm not working like a schema, but just look what the year brings, and then sometimes I'm even getting surprised by the wines coming out.
That is a lovely thing to hear, that you sometimes get surprised by your own product.
Oh, yes.
That's good. So we are definitely like looking much forward to see you in January in Copenhagen, together with like many other talented Mosel winemakers. I think will be a blast of a Mosel party if I look at the lineup of the quality producers. But to round it off, last question for you. 5 years from now, where are you and where is the estate Stefanie Vornhecke?
Yes, hopefully I'm a bit forwarded in marketing. So that's one chance I see with working with my daughter, that we have more, we can more concentrate on getting forward in marketing. That's always the thing. You try to be perfect in the vineyard, and then you lose time for other things which are even as necessary in the winery. And well, one thing I'm really hoping of, that my big invest in the winery will be finished. So in 3 years from now on, I'll be hopefully rid of my debts and leave maybe a wealthy winery to my daughter.
I think that's a perfect thing to cheers on while we sit here in the ever-coming rain.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time, Stefanie, and for introducing us to your winery, and see you in January in Copenhagen.
Yes, I'm looking really forward to be part of the summit.
Beautiful. Cheers.
Cheers.